Welcome back to school, grade 5 students. I'm super excited that I will be your science teacher for this year too. This is Miss Fatin and this is our first science lecture video together. So last year we covered lots of lessons together talking about plants pollination, plants reproduction, different types and categories of plants, animals classification, and food groups. This year we're going to start talking about plants, the way plants get the food they need since they are living things, the way plants breathe, and what's the role of plants in the carbon cycle in nature. Plants are organisms. What do we mean by the word organism? An organism is a living thing. It lives, it grows, and at the end of its life, it dies. During its life, an organism needs energy. It gets the energy it needs from food. People and animals are organisms. They need food. What do we do to get food? How do we get food? Actually, we are consumers. We eat, we consume food. Animals also are consumers. They consume or they eat food. A rabbit, for example, feeds on plants. An eagle feeds on animals. Animals eat, they consume food to get the energy they need. Plants are also living things. They need food to live and grow. But how do plants get the food they need? Let's start with the first kind of plants. This is the first type, the green plants. The green plants are the only plants that can make their own food. Can you give, for example, a piece of pizza to a tree to eat? No. Plants are not consumers. They are producers. They produce their own food out of several things that they take from the nature, such as carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. In order to grow and to live, plants need food. So they cook their food by themselves. What do they need to cook the food they need? They need few things from the nature. They take carbon dioxide from the air, which is a gas. They take the carbon dioxide from the air. They take water from the soil. And they use the sunlight energy. What for? To produce their own food. They are not consumers like us. They do not eat like we do. They produce, they make their own food. So, why are green plants almost the only organisms that are considered as producers? Because they produce or they make their own food. There is another word that means producers, which is autotrophs. An autotrophic organism is an organism that produces its own food. It does not eat, it consumes. Sometimes a plant cannot get all of its needs from the nature. Sometimes a plant can cook its food, but it cannot, for example, get the water it needs. So it needs someone else to help it. That's what we call a symbiotic relationships. Sometimes plants need help, so they make friends. They go into symbiotic relationships with other species to help them. In the coming video, there is a short explanation of what symbiosis means. Symbiosis is a relationship between two organisms, two living things, and there are different types of symbiosis for sure. Let's watch together the video that talks and gives an example of symbiotic relationships between organisms.
Normally when people talk about symbiosis, they're talking about two different types of organisms cooperating to help each other survive. For example, clownfish hide from predators among the tentacles of sea anemones. In return, they feed the anemone with their own droppings. Yum yum. The anemone and the clownfish enjoy a symbiotic relationship. In biology, however, symbiosis has a broader definition than simple cooperation. It's classically defined as any long-term living together of unlike organisms. Let me say that again. Symbiosis, the long-term living together of unlike organisms.
The relationship between the clownfish and the anemones is a good example of symbiotic relationships between organisms, and here is another example. This is an organism that we call the lichen. The lichen is a complex organism formed by two organisms, which are the fungus, a mushroom, and an alga, which is a green plant. The fungus and the alga are two partners. They make a symbiotic relationship. They go through a symbiotic relationship. They help each other and they live together through a symbiotic relationship. The mushroom does an important job. It takes water and minerals and gives them to the alga. The alga then, since it is a green plant, produces food and it gives some food in return to the fungus. So let me repeat. We have a mushroom, we have an alga, which is a green plant. The mushroom gives water and minerals to the alga. Then the alga uses the water to cook food. After cooking the food, it gives some to the mushroom. So they both help each other. They both form a complex organism that we call a lichen. Here are pictures of lichen. Okay? That's what we call a symbiotic relationship. Let me give you the word. This is what we call mutualism. I'll explain it more in the next video, in next week's video. In this relationship, both organisms are happy, right? The alga is happy since there is an organism providing it with water and minerals, and also the mushroom is happy because there is someone providing it with food. Both are happy, both are helping each other. This is a good example of symbiotic relationships. We talked about producers, about green plants who produce their own food. We also talked about symbiotic plants, plants that need help. Here is the third type of plants, the carnivorous plants, such as the Venus flytrap. This plant is called the Venus flytrap, and as you can see, there is a fly inside. Here is another example, and also a third example of carnivorous plants. We call them carnivorous plants because they eat animals. Look, they eat insects. They feed on insects. Actually, these plants make their own food. They take water, they take carbon dioxide and use the sunlight to make their own food. They produce some food, but this food is not enough. So they need another way to bring more food. What do? They consume insects. They consume animals. Sometimes there are types of carnivorous plants that can eat a mouse. They can eat also frogs. So again, carnivorous plants are producers because they produce their own food, but this food is not enough, so they need another way. They consume animals. For this reason, we call them carnivorous plants. That's it. In this lecture video, we talked about 3 models of nutrition. We have plants that make their own food, which are the green plants. We have plants that consume animals, which are the carnivorous plants. And we also have plants that need help, which are the symbiotic plants. A green plant like an apple tree, like a strawberry plant, is a green plant. They are producers. The Venus flytrap is a carnivorous plant, and we talked about how the alga needs help, and it composes a lichen with fungi or mushrooms. A producer, this is important, a producer is an organism that produces its own food. Symbiosis means a long-term relationship between 2 different organisms. I hope to see you all in the classroom on Monday. I miss you and can't wait to answer all of your questions. Bye bye.